Hello, I'm Simon.
And I'm Dan.
And this is the Wikicast, a podcast where Wikipedia takes us to a random article each week and we talk about what we find. Dan, what are we talking about this week?
This week, Simon, we're talking about women's liberation movement in Europe.
Oh my god.
Quite a large article. It took me, my wrist is sore because I've had to scroll right the way down to the bottom of this Wikipedia article, and it is just, it's a colossus.
How big is the page? Well, I got RSI from streaming through it. So,
yeah, it's got 16 points on its contents page, broken down by country, and it's one of those ones that towards the right of the page, it's got a part of a series on feminism. So wow. there's plenty to discuss.
A lot to unpack in the episode where we haven't done an episode for about a month. Actually,
yeah,
we had about a month off, and
it's
now
been crazy.
We're trying to catch up with a nice light topic, and oh boy, to get it over and done with before the rest of the episode. What have you been doing? Why have we not done an episode for a while?
Oh, well, I guess it's been very busy. I had, the last time we spoke, I would have been speaking about exams and things.
Yes.
Which all went very well, actually. I was quite pleased to see.
Yay!
So I'm allowed to progress into my third year, which is always lovely. I've been sorting out things with the house in preparation for the new housemate to move in. New housemate has moved in. It's all been a rip-roaring success so far. And just, getting the house in order. Things I'll talk about later on in the podcast, but needless to say, there's been plenty going on. What about you?
Oh yeah, plenty going on. I think the last time we spoke would have been because we recorded the last episode in advance.
Oh, we did.
I was going to be in a field, and that was because I had an incredibly stressful week, an unbelievably stressful week, finishing off the corrections to my PhD thesis, which is now done and submitted. I've yet to hear back from them, but it'd be unusual for them to have to, me to make any subsequent changes. So hopefully that is now done. I was then in a field for a week with a bunch of scouts, which was great fun. Hopefully we'll end up talking about that. And then after that, I was in France for 2 weeks with a bunch of friends.
Goodness.
Which was an ideal holiday of a lot of drinking, a few cultural things, a lot of reading in the sun, and playing Dungeons and Dragons and poker.
Brilliant.
It was amazing.
Gosh.
And now I've come back and Pixel Girl has started up she's teaching now, so like we've now got into this routine with like an adult routine, and it's all terribly exciting.
Wow.
And it involves getting up at 6:30 every morning, but
what a joy. I definitely, just as a brief aside, I definitely didn't get up at 6:30 this morning. The reason why I will discuss later. It's very exciting.
Is it a very cheeky reason?
It's quite cheeky. Oh, it is rather. Yes.
Right. And on that note, let's talk about feminism in Europe.
Brilliant, yeah. So for those who might not know about the women's liberation movement in Europe, the women's liberation movement in Europe was a radical feminist movement that started in the late 1960s and continued through to the 1970s and in some cases into the early 1980s. Inspired by developments in North America and triggered by growing presence of women in the labour market, the movement soon gained momentum in Britain and Scandinavian countries. Wow. Okay. In addition to improvements for working conditions and equal pay, liberationists fought for complete autonomy for women's bodies, including their right to make their own decisions regarding contraception and abortion, and more independence on sexuality.
So this is a very broad sort of...
incredibly broad.
Movement.
The kind of the first blurb, if you like, or a few paragraphs gives kind of a vague kind of explanation as to, I think, basically kind of rudimentary feminism. And then it goes...
Men and women should be treated equally.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Yeah, there you go. And then it breaks down the movement for this particular period for Austria, Belgium, France, Germany, Greece, Ireland, Italy, the Netherlands, Portugal, Scandinavia, including Denmark, Iceland, Norway and Sweden, Spain, Switzerland, the UK, and everything it entails. And then there's some notes and references at the end. But it's very big. I think this is the largest Wikipedia article we've ever had.
So feminism occurred in like waves, didn't it? So is this was this second wave feminism? This is where I exposed my complete and shocking lack of knowledge, because in my head, first wave feminism is like the rudimentary, we should be treated as human beings and get votes and that kind of thing. Whereas this seems to be like in my head, this is the second wave stuff of sort of equality in the workplace and that that kind of feminism. Is that right?
Kind of, yeah. I think from my understanding of it, and I've only ever briefly kind of touched on feminism through English modules and things. There's kind of the second wave, mid 20th century, can go right the way up to the beginning of the 70s, and through until late 70s, early 80s, and then the third wave that you're saying goes through proper late 20th century and early 21st. So I think there's not so much a clear divide as maybe just kind of third wave is more abundant, let's say.
So it's a bit like when people talk about the Stone Age, Bronze Age, and Iron Age. They occurred in different places at different times, and the length of those ages isn't the same everywhere. Absolutely.
So for the purposes of this, given that it says late 1960s and some case into the early 1980s, I would say that that's probably second wave, because third wave would be that bit later, like 85 onward through into the early 21st.
So everyone strap in for half an hour of two white dudes talking about feminism.
Yeah, don't worry, we're going to mansplain it though, so it's going to be fine if you don't understand.
Don't worry, ladies, we'll explain this to you. I realise this is a lot for your dainty feminine heads. Don't worry, the men are here. God, I felt awful saying that. I feel physically disgusted at myself.
It's just this. This article is just huge, and even just the individual breakdown for discussion about the women's liberation movement in England specifically, which is within the category of the UK. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 paragraphs long.
What do you think the longest Wikipedia article that you've ever used is?
Ooh, probably something like the portal for the Romantic period, or actually no, philosophy, because I had a Greek philosophy exam. That's just insanely big. Even the early stuff, it just goes on forever and a day. Very interesting, but just comically long articles.
I'm wondering. I'm going to go on the Wikipedia article for climate change. So to put this in perspective, dear reader, the article on climate change, which is obviously going to be one of the most controversial, heavily edited, carefully cited articles on Wikipedia.
Is it an error 404?
No, fortunately not.
Good.
It's got 10 subsections.
That's crazy.
And approximately a quarter of its runtime, if you like, is footnotes and references. So, and how many sections did you say this was?
This is 16, but that's not including, 10 has 4 subsections, 13 has 4, and 16 has 2 for citations and bibliography. So if I was, if you were to print out this entire Wikipedia page on A4 pieces of paper, I imagine you'd probably have...
Oh, hang on, I bet you could do that. If you go Control or Command P, it will, I bet you it will say as well. So if I wanted to print out the climate change Wikipedia article, it would be 23 sheets of paper.
Okay, this would be 38.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Jeez, that's a thesis chapter.
It's just mad.
Okay, so we've prevaricated a lot.
We have.
So give me some deets. Tell me what happened.
Okay. Well, it's saying towards the end of this section, because this is specific to Europe, it says there were robust liberationist movements in almost all of Western Europe countries, though Greece, Portugal, and Spain were late to form movements as they emerged from dictatorship in the era.
Yeah, feminism in Spain is like a sort of an interesting thing in itself. I now know from Pixel Girl because of Franco, basically. Yes, sorry, as you were.
By the middle of the 1970s or early 1980s, as compromises were made by liberal reformers and governments on major target issues, most liberationist groups had disbanded or gone to work on single focus issues. Bringing issues to the public, which up to the time had been considered private matters such as division of household labour, lesbianism, objectification of women and sexual violence, was controversial and met with backlash from the media and public, who labelled liberationists as man-haters. And this is, that I suppose that was then going to herald the third wave of feminism.
Yeah, so this is the kind of feminism that people like sort of 60-year-old dudes who are in government tend to like. This is the kind of feminism that people, when they think of feminism, have a problem with.
Yeah.
Like, oh, the idea of being man haters because you want to. So, what can you give me an example that it was equality in the workplace and lack of sexual harassment, that kind of thing? God, how dare people ask for that?
I know, it's just
they must
mad,
hate men. If you don't want to be sexually harassed in the workplace, then that's not a world I want to live in.
It's one of these articles actually that it's really hard to try and give some idea of the scope because it is just insanely long.
Yeah,
there's just so much. Interestingly, the C also links there's women's liberation movement in Asia, North America, and Oceania.
I imagine it would be interesting to do an intercomparison of, sort of waves of feminism in different continents, because my gut feeling would be that China, for example, I don't know how developed, if you like, quote unquote, like feminism is compared to the West because of how repressive the government is in kind of every aspect of people's lives. I don't know if I've just massively offended a huge portion of our audience.
Well, but here you go. Here's a brief interlude. Women's status in China during the 20th century were tied closely to the communist revolution there, and women's social status rose quickly. Initially, Chinese people believed that the communist revolution would end patriarchy. During the Cultural Revolution, women were celebrated through slogans like "Woman hold up half the sky," while simultaneously they were discouraged from discussing gender issues, which was seen as reactionary. In the 1970s, new institutions that benefited and were staffed by women were created, including cafeterias, kindergartens and nurseries. Women's rights were managed by the state itself.
Wow.
But there was no independent feminist movement during the period.
Okay, so that's sort of, that was my gut feeling about it. Okay. This is an issue where I feel like, certainly I can't speak for you, but I feel like I'm woefully underread and sort of walking on tiptoes, because it's like you can sort of engage with the subject in the best possible way, but you will almost certainly say something that is dumb and you haven't thought through enough. It's just very, very hesitant to say anything now, which is a problem when you're doing a podcast, an inherently audio-based platform.
Well, this would be a prime opportunity to actually maybe ask the readers, our dear readers, feminist literature, email in with some recommendations. One of my course texts was Vindication of the Rights of Women by Wollstonecraft.
Okay, I know Pixel Girl did a bit of feminism stuff, and specifically it was in it was in Spain. I think she may have done a module on it in France as well. But yeah, it's just something that give us your recommendations. I would be very, very curious. I've actually been reading quite a lot. As I mentioned on the holiday, I was reading a lot. And it'd be good to populate my to read list further. With feminism stuff. Because recently I read the book that actually made a massive impact on me was, of all things, when talking about feminism, Arnold Schwarzenegger's autobiography.
It's meant to be quite good, isn't it?
It is, and I found it immensely, not powerful, but inspirational. Because he's not a person that I would want to be in every aspect of his life, because he fathered an illegitimate son with his cleaner, and smokes massive cigars, and there's things he does, and
he's not perfect.
He's not perfect. There will be things that will come out after he dies, I'm sure, to do with sexual harassment. You can just sort of tell. But in many ways, he is very inspirational. In terms of, he was a kid from a village in the middle of nowhere in Austria who kind of grew up, and he's describing his childhood, and it really is the bare bones. He then went on to be unbelievably strong in Austria and moved to Germany, and then became this bodybuilding sensation and just worked harder than everyone else, like lifting 4 or 5 hours a day, 6 days a week. And then moving to America, and on top of that, then taking college courses, teaching himself how to run a business, investing in real estate, learning English. Before he even did The Terminator, he'd made $1 million from real estate, because by the way, after being the most successful bodybuilder of all time, he then became a phenomenon in the acting world, and the sort of the epitome of the 80s action star. And then after that, he went on to become the governor of California. Like, I feel like that's the kind of kind of autobiography where that you're going to learn something, because if you're going to achieve that, they've got to have their head screwed on right.
Yes,
and it's different from someone achieving that and coming from a rich background. Well,
it kind of it epitomizes the almost stereotypical idea of the American dream, People can go to
in many
America,
ways.
and if you're willing to put the work in, you can, make your million and go and do stuff. I mean, obviously I feel like that's probably changed from the
just a bit.
from the 60s and 70s, but
yeah, and it is different if you see somebody accomplish that from. I mean, I have a bit of a chip on my shoulder about it, I guess, because of going to Oxford and having to deal with access submissions sort of for all the time I've been on the internet. But I do perceive people differently if they've achieved lots and lots of success, and then they're like, oh, they had rich parents. They had a massive leg up in this world. Whereas to come from nothing like Arnold did shows. Basically the lesson that he wanted to get across in the book was so much of life just comes down to reps, like endless repetitions. And I remember said this to my mum, and she actually said, as a musician, you should know this. And she was exactly right. You just drill a piece so many times until you can't get it wrong. If you've got a speech, you drill it so many times. If you want to, if in Arnold's case, if he was doing a stunt or a line in a movie, he would just do repetitions until he couldn't get it wrong. And it's just putting the effort in. It's getting up early, working really hard, and then getting out there. So what I'm asking for is, could someone recommend the feminist version of that book that's going to fire me up and make me want to get massive and swole and respect women even more than I do already? Because obviously, I feel like I'm a feminist ally and respect women because I'm not an awful human person.
Yeah. Answers on a postcard, or if it's easier, spongyelectric@gmail.com.
Yes, yeah. Do get in touch about whether or not I'm a terrible person.
I was just on the note of you finishing books. I've now been able to have a bit of time just to kind of read stuff for me rather than reading text. I finally finished Name of the Wind, the Patrick Rothfuss first
now, what did
of the
you
trilogy.
think? Because I'm very tempted to read it.
It's excellent. Truly brilliant. I finished it and I immediately put the book down, put my shoes on, walked to Waterstones and bought the second book.
Oh wow, that is basically as strong a recommendation as you can get.
It's incredibly well written. Not only in he's got such a kind of a developed sense of identity in his style of writing that's a real joy to read, but the way that the book is, the way that the story is told and how the novel is structured, almost kind of meta ways in a sense, because your chapter names might be called chapter 3 aside, and then you'll get chapter 7 aside, and those asides are your main character stopping a moment from telling the story that you've been reading, and he's in a pub he's telling this to somebody else. He's in like a tavern, if you like, and it'll say, I paused briefly and poured myself another flagon of ale and walked over to the fire and wondered about this, but even they have subtle references, being like, oh, I was recalling this time as I looked into the flickering flames, and little did I know that my how much shit I'd be in about a week's time, and then the next chapter is that story of. It's just brilliant. It really is. So
it's quite a cinematic technique then.
It really is. Yeah, it really is. Sort of,
because I love those kind of things. It's something that the best people that write for the Black Library, the Warhammer stuff. That's something that the best ones of them do very well, is you feel like you're watching a movie, but then you can do stuff in the book that you just wouldn't be able to do in a movie.
I think also the way that they treat essentially magic, which is referred to as sympathy in this, it's entirely based on like science and logic, and you creating connections with certain things, and you can only, like, if you're trying to manipulate something, you always need energy, and you can't just create energy from anywhere. So you might need to draw on the flame from a candle, but that's only going to have relative strength. Or what you can do is you can get if you're in kind of dire straits and you need to do something immediately, you can draw on the heat in your own blood as a source of energy and to kind of manipulate. Obviously, you're only very limited because you're not particularly warm compared to, say, like a roaring fire. But you'll get these things where you'll see that something going on, and somebody can get what's called binder's chills, where they go very pale and start sweating and shivering because they're drawing the heat out of their own body to fix to power a lamp, or it's really clever. It really is very, very good.
That's an idea that's in Eragon as well. I don't know if you've ever read Eragon.
I have, actually. Yeah.
What did you think of it?
See, I'm trying to remember what I did, because I would have read it years and years ago. Maybe in year 6 or 7.
Because I think at that age, you probably thought it was quite good. Whereas
Yeah.
I made the mistake of reading it when I was a bit older, and I was just like, after the second book, I started the third one.
And we won't talk about the film.
Oh, God, no.
But incidentally, of films we won't talk about, for some disgusting reason, the BBC have been... well, it's quite a nice idea. They've been showing all the classic Indiana Jones films on...
you mean all three of them?
Yeah, and they've done... They're all on iPlayer, and then I went on to iPlayer today to see if there was anything interesting on. Spotlight is on there, which is very fine. I think it's also on Netflix. But Kingdom of the f***ing Crystal Skull they've put on there as well.
Doesn't exist.
Which does
not exist.
It's just... So I'm very, very disappointed.
So basically, yeah, I got to the third book in the series, Brissinger, and I was like, oh, I can't be bothered. This is such hard work to get through. How amateur this is. But yeah, the idea with that you can draw life energy from people.
Yeah.
And like I remember there's when he learns how to meditate and do it, and like he accidentally kills a mouse because he takes their energy, and he's like, you didn't tell me that was going to happen. Which has kind of stuck with me. But so whilst we've been talking, one thing we did on holiday was we ended up doing quizzes a lot. Like
right.
I wrote a bunch of... Well, I wrote a movie quiz, and we also did a quiz of quizzes where everybody on the holiday wrote a round each. And I did one on books, and I messed up one of the questions, I now realise, because I asked the question, what was the highest rated book on Goodreads? And I actually gave an answer which I think I must have looked at the wrong list, because I'm now looking at the top ones because I was curious to see if the Name of the Wind was. Because on the list I had, Name of the Wind was number 2. And I was trying to bring it up to refresh my memory, but it turns out I actually just looked at the wrong list. But do you want to have a guess at what like the top books... These are the best books ever, with something like 170,000 votes on this poll are on Goodreads.
Oh, God. Okay. Well, I would imagine there's going to be like classics. So, I say Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Be on there somewhere.
Interestingly, I presumably it is on this list somewhere. The top-rated Harry Potter is in at number 2, which is Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix.
It is very, very fine. What about To Kill a Mockingbird?
To Kill a Mockingbird is in at number 3. You're very good at this. I never would have guessed number 1. It was not a book I would have ever conceived of putting at number 1.
Now, I reckon there's going to be... We've spoken about this one before, because I remember in class they used to say that it was being absurd. Is it... Oh, I forget who wrote it. The Book Thief, the one that I remember ripping it to shreds because I found it really, really slow.
Thank you!
Yeah.
Everyone raved about that book.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I remember one of the first... We've spoken about it, and we were both just like, I don't see the hype. I really don't.
Like, at the end, it's quite emotional. It hits you quite hard at the end. But, like, my God, you have to get through so much of just, like, I'm not engaged with these characters. Anyway, that is at number 6.
Okay.
So if I'll go through number... let's go for the top 20, because just quickly. This gives you an idea of what's to come. At number 20 is Divergent, the first of the Divergent series.
For God's sake.
Only narrowly pipping that is Les Mis.
Les Mis is 19.
Yeah.
I thought it'd be higher up.
And it has 609,000 votes, which is nearly as many pages as there are in Les Mis. Then at number 18 is Picture of Dorian Gray. 17 is Alice's Adventures Through the Looking Glass. 16 is Memoirs of a Geisha. 15 is The Da Vinci Code. Oh my God.
Okay.
14 is Wuthering Heights. 13 is The Giving Tree, which I've not read. 12 is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I have and is excellent. 11 is The Fault in Our Stars, which I've read and is excellent.
Yeah, it's very fine.
Number 10 is a box set of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. So that's putting a lot of votes into one box, but there we go.
Okay.
Then at number 9, Gone with the Wind.
Yeah.
Number 8, Animal Farm. Number 7, The Chronicles of Narnia.
I'm going to say, just before, I thought that somewhere in the 20, Twilight must be there. And if it's already in the top 10, I'm cross.
You're going to rage quit out of the podcast. That's it. You're done. Well, at number 7 is The Chronicles of Narnia. At number 6 is The Book Thief. And at number 5 is Twilight.
Oh, for God's sake.
Goodreads decided that Twilight is somewhere between The Book Thief and Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen in terms of quality.
Goodness sake. And it trumps Animal Farm.
Yep.
Mental.
Then 4 is Pride and Prejudice, 3 is To Kill a Mockingbird, 2 is Order of the Phoenix, So it's strange that that's so much higher rated than the other Harry Potters, I think.
It's the longest, isn't it?
It is. And as a friend of mine pointed out, this is my friend Claire who said this, like, I didn't know about the ring cycle theory of Harry Potter, about how, like, book 4 is the turning point in the book. And, like, then every book, like, the pairs of books are mirrored around number 4. So in 5 and 3, the kids ride a flying creature to try and save Sirius. In 3, they're successful, but after Order of the Phoenix, after Goblet of Fire in Order of the Phoenix, they're like in the bad realm, the bad half, so they fail. And then in books 2 and 6, you've got a diary of a Slytherin boy at Hogwarts talking to the protagonist, and it's defeated in 2, and it's takes over the school in 6, and then 1 and 8 you've got Harry dying. You got Harry being carried somewhere by Hagrid, but like it's all flipped in the second half of the series. I'll include a link in the show notes because Claire, you really opened my eyes with that one. That was very interesting. And then at number 1. Because I delayed this one nicely. At number 1, according to Goodreads.com, the greatest book ever written with 5.5 million ratings and an average rating of 4.33. It's The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins.
No. What? Oh, okay. Sometimes the internet can be a really good place, and then other times it can do things like this.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's because of the people who are on Goodreads, right? It's
so where was the name of the... I want to know where the name of the wind is on that list.
That is not in the top 100, apparently. But I think the thing is, this is a list that weights the average rating and the total number of votes.
Right. So
it probably has a higher rating. So, yeah, Hunger Games is 4.33. Name with the Wind has an average rating of 4.55, and it's like 500,000 ratings. So it's half a popularity contest, basically.
Yeah.
Which is the best kind of contest. It's like the school competition for who's going to be named head boy or head girl. Truly a representative, look at the talent in the school.
My goodness. Well, there we go.
We all learned something today. We've also, just before we started the podcast, I was saying to Dan, I feel like we should make the podcast a bit more focused on Wikipedia. What have we done in the first, I don't even know, how long did we manage to actually seriously engage with the longest article, with the most material we've ever had to work with? Just immediately veered off.
Yeah.
This podcast is forever that meme of the driver leaving the freeway, and it's you could carry on and talk about Wikipedia, or we could have a random side tangent.
Yeah,
that is us in a nutshell.
Absolutely.
So, is there anything else that you'd like to talk about what was the exact title of the
Women's Liberation Movement in Europe?
About the Women's Liberation Movement in Europe?
I don't think so. To be honest, there is just so much. I'm very, very keen to hear what's recommended to us, but I feel I've exhausted what I can just give as a general.
It's just so much information. It's overwhelming.
Yeah, it's too much. It's like when you go to eat at a restaurant and the menu is far too big. They've got a normal menu, then seasonal specials, then specials of the day, then it's actually our anniversary, so we're doing a special anniversary menu as well. And you've just got so much choice that you're sitting there for half an hour not knowing what to do with yourself.
Basically, yes, that's this episode. So thanks, women in Europe, for being so liberated that we can't even begin to imagine how to talk about it.
Yeah.
That's how successful you were in the 60s, 70s, and early 80s.
Yes. Sorry, I've stupidly... The lights are quite dim in the lounge, and I've lit a really nice scented candle called Detox. And it's sending me off.
Number 3 in the most Dan Moore sentences that have ever been said.
Oh, and with that, because I've suddenly remembered how this podcast is structured, we're in Critics' Corner, Simon. Do you remember this place?
God, yeah, it's all dusty.
Hang on, let me just... There you go. Oh, gosh.
Oh, God, it's covered in porn.
God. Oh, that's not dust. Oh, God.
Oh, no. What have you been watching recently? Oh, that was a very poorly chosen metaphor.
Yeah. Oh,
what have you been watching other than porn, Dan?
Well, I watched Spotlight again today because it's on BBC iPlayer and it's very, very fine. I've had a bit of an iPlayer binge recently. There's been some really great stuff on. As I mentioned earlier, I watched the 3 Indiana Jones, kind of the only Indiana Jones that were ever made. Gone Girl was also on iPlayer, which is very, very fine indeed.
Yeah, I've been waiting to watch that. I want to read the book first, because I know the book is meant to be excellent and probably better than the movie. But okay, very fine choices so far.
Yeah, and then to be honest, there hasn't been a great deal more other than occasionally watching like Jamie Cooks Italy on All 4. Because they look like some quite good recipes, and I've got a new oven, so I was like, I better got to put it to good use. I've been listening to a lot because I've now, having been formally installed at Exeter Cathedral as choral scholar.
He's been plugged in. He's had the security thing. He's not going to set a fire.
This is the thing. I didn't realise, incredibly ignorant of me, literally where the word installed comes from, to be placed in your stall. That's kind of its etymological root.
Really? It's that literal. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is very cool. It was a very, very fun service. Banging music for evensong. My parents were down, so they came to Eucharist and evensong. Eucharist in the morning and evensong in the afternoon. There's this ceremony where you're kind of escorted out of the stall. You go down to the dean. The dean.
I think it's time for you to leave, sir.
Yeah. Get out.
You've had enough.
It's not going to work. You go across. You make an oath, and you say some things, oath. And then you're walked back by the director of music, and for me it was my lay clerk, Gordon Pike, the man, the legend.
Gordon's alive.
Gordon, he's very much so, and it's very loud. But they kind of escort you into your spot, stand either side of you, and go, by the power invested in me as director of music, blah blah blah, we install you, Daniel Moore, as choral scholar of Exeter Cathedral, and then they shove you down into your seat. They just have both hands on your shoulders and push you down, and they make the whole kind of row shake and bang, which is quite funny. And then that's it. So I've been keeping up with just an incredible amount of music. I think I kind of expected how much it would be, and then also completely didn't, because it has just been mad. And I've had services to sing more on the weekends because I mentioned earlier as well, ordinations. So those who are being made or being ordained as priests or deacons would have big ceremonies in the cathedral. So I've been singing at those.
So for those of you who that might be unfamiliar with it, just very, very briefly, how much are you singing at the moment?
Every day. I sing every day. So I sing evensong every day.
Music every day.
Yeah. I sing 2 services on a Sunday. I normally get Saturdays off, but I didn't get this Saturday off because of, again, these ordinations. So I have a folder currently sitting on the keyboard in the lounge, just entitled Cathedral Music, and it's always just masses because I like to take it home and look at it rather than just rely on trying to sight read it and get away with it in the service.
Yeah, that's a good call.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun though. It's been really, really lovely, and we had the back row, which is the kind of the adults of the choir, because obviously the front row is all the boys and girls, the trebles. We had the kind of a black back row dinner, which was very nice, all black tie.
Oh, nice.
We went to the Canon Precentor's house on the green and had some drinks and canapes and things. Then went over into the where the kind of the cathedral cafe is, basically, but they'd kind of cleared it all and put on a dinner for us, which was really nice. And then we went to the pub and got very drunk and had to be up in the morning for Eucharist. So
hey, there we go, happy ending.
It's brilliant, really.
I'll tell you, he was utterly confounded, utterly perplexed by the idea of a choral scholarship. Was the great YouTuber Paint. Who,
oh really?
I had a proper chance to meet. So I did Summer in the City, which is, for those of you who don't know, it's a sort of a YouTube convention in London every year, and it's quite a big thing. I think the capacity of the place is 10,000 people. It wasn't full, but several thousand people come to this thing, and I did a panel. I moderated a panel with a bunch of creators on it, and one of them was Paint, who I ended up talking to for a bit afterwards, and I mentioned that I was a singer and that I actually lived with this guy, and we were both choral scholars. And when we went to see you in Amsterdam, because of VidCon Amsterdam, Paint did a set, and Dan and I were there at the back screaming our bloody lungs out.
Yeah, we were indeed.
And he seemed utterly perplexed by this idea that so wait, you were at university, but you were paid to sing. And we were yeah, I know, it's amazing, right? But he just it was amazing. It was like this kind of childlike enthusiasm that like that this was a thing that you could do.
Yeah.
But he also seemed very interested in the podcast. So if Mr. Paint, if you're watching, John, then you're very well as an open invite to come on the podcast.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. I mean, imagine we talk about music quite a bit anyway, but I imagine we'd probably have a really amazing chat about it, and we can educate further on what a choral scholarship is and what it's like, certainly in a chapel choir or a cathedral. And
I mean, to be honest, there's a bunch of musical people that I'd love to get on. I mean, I tweeted him a few times. I get the impression we're on different wavelengths. Sideways, Ethan. I tweeted the other week that I was like, can we just all agree that the Uruk-hai have the best leitmotif in any soundtrack ever? And then people there was a lot of engagement on it, and I was like, okay, I'll reply to it. And I was like, I replied to my own tweet with at Sideways, I hear you know something about leitmotifs, expecting him to weigh in and like kind of come at me with a better, more learned opinion. And he just replied with yes, full stop. I was like, oh, I guess we're on different wavelengths. That's fine. But
Fair
yeah,
enough.
I'd love to get him. I'd love to get Tim Blaze from Acapella Science. That'd be fun.
Yeah, it's a shame too that there isn't kind of like a really lovely ukulele playing female YouTuber who does really great music that I may have met already and been completely flawless with. I just can't think of anyone who would fit that.
I can't think of anyone that you've been flawless with. I do remember you having a breakdown when you met Dodie.
Okay, all right. Steady on. Whoa. I'm being triggered. You weren't there, man.
Having flashbacks to him being like, hey,
oh, God,
hello.
It was just... Wow.
Program resetting.
Yeah. Really outdid myself there.
Feed me tea. Robo-Dan.
Yeah.
So I suppose, if I'm going to critique anything, because I haven't been watching a huge amount. I've been reading a fair bit. If I was to critique Summer in the City, it is not our crowd. It is very different crowds to VidCon. In that it's basically a lot of younger fans, particularly female skewed, and basically I walked around the convention hall because I wanted to see what was going on. I got recognised once or twice, and Tom Scott, who I did a game show with, huge channel, like 1.5 million or something like that subscribers, very famous. He walked around the convention hall and he got recognised by 2 people's dads, and that was it. It's just a very, very different setting, but it was fun, and Pixel Girl and her sister got to meet some of their favourite YouTubers, which was nice. And I was actually talking to Hannah Witten about the Banging Book Club, which is her, Lucy Moon, and I can't remember the name of the other girl, I'm so sorry. And they talk about a book every month, and it's amazing how their setup was. They put a Zoom H4n. This is, bear in mind, this is a podcast that's about 3 or 4 times more popular than the Wikicast. Like, it's actually quite a popular podcast. They basically just put one mic in the middle of the room and then all 3 of them talk. And so, like...
Strong.
I went to a panel, which also had my Alex, my gym buddy Alex, was on this panel. And I basically pulled Hannah to one side afterwards. And I was like, just please let me tell you how to make a podcast. Like, I feel like someone needs to sit you down and talk to you about microphones. I realise that could have been interpreted as mansplaining, but I was genuinely just trying to help. Because, like, we as a minnow of a podcast, and with way less money available, have, like, actually dedicated microphones, for example.
Yeah.
And we do processing on our audio.
And 100,000. We
have 100,000 downloads. That is quite right, Daniel. Amazing job, everyone.
Very exciting.
We hit that milestone when we weren't even uploading. We should stress, by the way, that was like our summer break. We had basically an unavoidable period where we couldn't upload. From now, this is hopefully now going to be a continuous streak of uploading for, well, until at least Christmas is my hope. Well, this is a new season of the Wikicast, so we take it really seriously.
Wikicast season 2, it's going to be very exciting. I've been speaking with James about just how I'm really thrilled at the prospect of just not really doing much except uni and music, because in previous years I've just tried to do way too many things at the same time, and it's just proved impossible to remain sane for more than 2 weeks without crashing or getting sick or
and don't you've got to resist the urge, because I've been in that position before. You've got to resist the urge to itch that scratch and be like, I think I could do a bit more. Like, slap yourself and be like, no, learn limits. It's gonna be something, that's for sure. But I've already started flicking through. I bought some books on Amazon the other day for some of my modules
this year. I now have 3. In fact, they're just sitting behind here. If I can grab them, I have a book called Into the Woods by John York, which is How Stories Work and Why We Tell Them, which is for my script writing for film and television.
Oh, you're doing a module in that? That is dope!
I've got one called The Instinctive Screenplay and one called Save the Cat, the last book on screenwriting that I need, which will be interesting to read. And then I have a really massive one by a gentleman called Stanley Ireland, which is Roman Britain, a source book, which is basically, from what I can understand, a kind of archaeological anthology of finds. Let's see what it says. Roman Britain... A source book has established itself as the only comprehensive collection of source material on the subject. It incorporates literary, numismatic, and epigraphic evidence of the history of Britain under Roman rule, as well as translations of major literary sources. What a thrill!
Page turner, absolute page turner.
Can't wait. So that's for my my Roman Britain module, and then I'm taking another one.
Have you read the Hero with 1,000 Faces? Is that also like reading the material?
No.
Because that's another classic one I know for what's it called? Like script writing.
Okay. No, I don't know. I mean, I imagine that I'm going to have to go and buy some more, but I haven't been given a book list yet. But it's for I've received a lot of flack for saying that I'm taking this module because apparently it's really, really quite heavy. But it's ancient literary criticism, and I'm taking it because the professor, who's professor of classics and happens to be convening this module, is brilliant. His name is Professor Wright. And he is basically, if Louis Theroux, Stephen Fry, and Rowan Atkinson had a love child, that's what you'd get. And he's brilliant. Wow. He occasionally appears at Evensong. He's just a really, really top bloke, and I'm really excited to be one of his third years, which is quite cool.
Incredible.
But yeah, I'm just doing that. So my working day will basically be, I want to be in the library for about 8:45, work right the way through until I've got enough time to dash down to Cathedral for rehearsal, so kind of half an hour before the service, sing the service, then come home, and then that's it. So, wow. And that's all I'm doing. I don't have a job. I'm not doing singers. I'm not doing GNS. I'm not doing Opera Society. I'm not.
So there is no excuse for you to ever miss an episode of the Wikicast, is what
basically,
you're saying.
Yeah, unless I forget.
Listeners, dear readers, do remind Dan of this. So just clip this little bit, and if I have to start an episode by saying, "Oh, we didn't do one last week because of Dan," then just send that to him, please.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I think it's good. I think it's going to be a lot healthier for you this year, and we can focus on, because we are both quite keen to grow the Wikicast. Like now with regular uploads, we're probably going to sort of shift the focus, maybe make it a little bit shorter, a bit less intimidating for new readers. And at the same time, I should, I don't know, maybe this isn't the right place to announce it, but I plan on doing more kind of jokey bullshit streams. Like I did one the other week where I just played Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy.
Yeah.
If you like the podcast for that dynamic of us just chatting, then those streams will be an endless supply of more material. So don't worry.
It's going to be more and Clark material, to be fair.
Yeah, well, yeah, but that's an open invite if you want to come on those streams and just sort of chat or play games.
I'm sure I'll find a free moment to come and annoy you.
Well, actually, that's another thing I should critique. Is I am so excited because I finally I bought a new game for the first time in God knows how long. I am the proud owner of 2 Point Hospital, which is the modern remake or sort of sequel, reimagining, reboot, whatever you want to call it, of Theme Hospital, which was one of my favourite games as a kid. It was one of the games that I remember so vividly playing, and it's a reboot which absolutely captures like the spirit of it. It is so fun. Awesome. I played it on a holiday. That might be one that I end up playing on one of those streams. And Dan can yell at me, and we can sort of do a Wikicast, but with me playing a game on the side. That was sort of coming off of talking about, don't worry, the Wikicast is probably going to change a little bit, but if you feel like you're going to miss out on content, you're not. There's going to be even more of it out there.
It's going to change for the better, we feel.
Definitely. The other thing, there were sort of two things that I wanted to bring up in the few minutes we have left in this corner. One is I have been obsessed with a piece of music, which is by a composer I brought up before, John Adams, and it is his opera Dr. Atomic, which is
I know, I've heard about this.
An amazing astonishing piece of music, which is about the Manhattan Project. It's about the development of the first nuclear bomb, and specifically the opera builds up to the first test happening, and Oppenheimer wrestling with whether or not he should do it, whether it's the right thing to do. You hear from his wife, you hear from their nanny, who was from a Native American tribe, who is from an area where in years after the tests they suffered a lot from radiation sickness because they did so many tests and the government didn't tell them what they were doing. And it's an amazingly powerful piece of music. There's a piece, the standout piece is an aria called "Batter My Heart," which takes its name from the same reason why the Trinity Test Site is called the Trinity Test Site. It comes from the Sacred Sonnets, I think they're called, by John Donne, who was a Elizabethan Stuart poet. I don't know if have you heard of him before?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so basically he wrote these things called the Holy Sonnets, and one of them, Oppenheimer. Well, I think Oppenheimer was given them to read by his wife, and he basically named Trinity after a line in the sonnet, and then the text of that sonnet becomes his wrestling with God about why should he do this? Can't God take this task away from him? Like, he doesn't want to have to do this, but if you're going to abandon me, then I have to do it. Kind of like really powerful text, and it fits in with the history, and the music is really powerful, and it's just. I made the mistake of listening to it on the way to Summer in the City, and I felt like my soul had been destroyed. Yeah. It's utterly heartbreaking music. Like, the end of the opera is this huge crescendo that takes place. It's like a crescendo and an increase in tempo over about 5 minutes as you just count down to the bomb going off, and you feel like nature is rebelling against this unnatural thing that's about to happen, and it's like screaming, and it doesn't want it to happen. And then there's this sort of low rumble, and I can't even describe the sound of it. Just sounds like fallout. It sounds like what you associate with nuclear war. And then there's this wave, a sudden wave of electrical noise that's just overwhelming and incredibly, loud and shocking. And then apparently, so there's a version on Spotify, I'll link it in the show notes, which I'm talking about, where they did this performance, and that happens, and then they dim the lights, and the lights go completely down, and the last thing you hear in the recording is a Japanese woman asking for water for her baby. And it's just I don't think I've ever had a piece of music affect me like it. It genuinely felt like it sort of blasted away at my soul. It was unlike anything I've ever heard. So
I have to give it a listen. I've just punched it into Wikipedia. Parry's Songs of Farewell, At the Round Earth's Imagined Corners, is one of his poems, John Donne's.
Oh, really?
And Benjamin Britten set 9 of the sonnets for soprano and tenor in his Holy Sonnets of John Donne. So there's a way in. Say, we could always bring it back to something choral, but there you go.
The choral cast, everyone.
Yeah. Oh, and John Tavener did some stuff as well.
The latter or the former? Like the latter. The early one. Oh, nice.
Set 3 of Donne's sonnets. I spit in my face, death be not proud, and I am a little world made cunningly for soloist and a small ensemble. Very cool. Okay, I'll add that to my listening list.
Absolutely do. And I'll send you the recording that it should be, because it is just... It's exceptional. The other thing that I wanted to bring up very quickly was I did a first game of D&D. I DM'd my first ever campaign on holiday.
How was that?
We only did a couple of sessions, so we were working on the Minds of Phandelver starter set. After having talked to Mark Humes, the professional dungeon master,
Clang.
to see the Oxcast, he said it was a good idea. And basically, we got through a whole encounter in a cave system with goblins, and we got to the village where the paths will then suddenly diverge and they can do whatever they want. And so I got like the experience of doing pretending to be a goblin, like that they were negotiating with, and then like having to be like a barkeeper who, of course, when you're in like a D&D setting, all the peasants are West Country. Like,
yeah, obviously. Of course. Yeah.
So I was like, "Oh, good day, travelers. How are you today?" That kind of thing. And then what made me want to bring this up was one of the party, Claire, who was playing an elf called was it Robin Hallwinter or something like that? decided that they wanted to meet up with the other elf in town and get a quest from them. And it's like, it was a knock on the door, and then I was like, oh, so a tall, elegant-looking, slightly older elf opens the door, and I was like, oh yes, hi, hello, can I help you? And Claire was like, hi, Dan. Like, apparently my elf voice, my female elf voice, is just you.
Thanks very much.
So, you could thank Claire for that one.
Cheers, Claire.
And I was like, oh, I'll just put my knitting down and come in. I just made some tea.
Yes.
That kind of thing.
I've just been tending the honeysuckle out in the garden. Do please come and look.
Literally, it's like you were there.
Yeah. Well, I hilariously, as an aside, I mean, I mentioned design beforehand. That will be me this year because I've ripped everything out of my garden, and my housemate and I are going to be building some raised beds probably tomorrow in the day, and we're going to turn it into a haven of loveliness. It's going to be really pleasant. But there you go.
Oh, that's going to be lovely.
Adding more to the elf.
The elf
theory. Yeah.
But the thing that made me laugh the most about the whole experience was it was really fun, by the way. And like as a DM, I was slightly worried that I was just going to be the facilitator of fun and like I wouldn't enjoy it myself. But it was really fun, and I'd like to continue the campaign. But like it's amazing how character traits and characters can appear from like a single dice roll. So in the first encounter where the travelers get ambushed by goblins, one of the characters, it was played by my very good friend John, who was our noble. He was a people's champion. He wanted to restore his wealth. Yeah, Tall John.
Yeah.
And he was, like a noble, and we were all thinking he was going to be like the hero of the piece. But then he rolled a nat 1 on his initiative for the first thing. And so for the rest of the campaign, he was this idiot. He was like, the goblins! Kind of like smacking his head with a saucepan kind of thing. And like all that came from was a single dice roll.
Yeah,
but like then whenever he had to act anything out, like, oh, so you cleave the goblin in two, and it was like, the goblin! Like
amazing.
And like we had the two we duplicated a character. I was like, basically there are 6 of us, there are 5 character sheets, so two of you will have the same character sheet, and we ended up with 2 halflings who were the thieves and like knife specialists, and they decided that they were the girls from The Shining. They were like, come with us forever and ever.
Oh my god, I can't believe I didn't mention it.
You were in The Shining?
No,
I knew it.
I watched Ready Player One.
Oh, what did you think?
It's amazing.
Really?
It's really good. It's really good.
You're the first person I've heard say that. So
I really liked it. I really, really liked it. I just had the best time watching every section because it is just so riddled with game culture and internet. It's really good. And I watched it on the TV at home, which is quite big. And you need to because it's such a visual spectacle. I'm really well. The thing is, I really regret not seeing it in the cinema because much like going to see something like A Quiet Place, you need to see it in that kind of environment. It won't be the same if you watch it at home. So if anyone's at if you happen to be much like Exeter University where we have a student cinema, or if there's some kind of outdoor showing of it on a big screen, do go because it's incredible. It's a very, very fine.
So what about it did you enjoy?
Everything.
Like what specifically what made it so good?
I liked I thought the story was really endearing and simple. I thought that the way that they kind of treat the kind of the nostalgia and the kind of pop culture was done really quite tastefully at times, and then at other times really not, but it's hilarious. Like, it's just really good. It's really hard to explain unless you see it because I haven't seen a film like it in its scope. Like it's just colossal. It's also got a really fantastic cast. I think it was cast really brilliantly. Mark Rylance has a very, very key role, and I think he's fantastic. So yeah, if you get an opportunity to watch it, please do because it's very, very good. I'd be curious to see what you think.
Well, we should probably move on. In the spirit of trying to keep this podcast moving, shall we leap on to, I believe it's Patreon Corner?
I think it is. Let's go.
Top lad. Well, then we find ourselves in Patreon Corner. Funnily enough, that's how the power of editing works.
Yeah.
We have to say thank you to the people who make this podcast possible. We have our producers, our top lads, and well, I mean, without any further ado, they're David Scarehill, Carl Much, Matt Maguire,
Dan Hanvey, Marut Vakira Punyawat, Billy Toulson,
The Moustache Man, Fee Gascoigne, Connor Levers,
Lewis Watson, Ben McMurtry, Simon Torseth,
Elliot Conway, Lachlan Woods, Geordie Eschendahl,
Davy Schramm, Vontabell, Tapio Kirkin,
Yeah, thank you.
Jay Wright,
Alex Greer, Ben Dent, Wonderful Stephen,
Eric Bolliger, Henry Brewster, Habiba Amjad,
Eric Davis, Isabel Ostrowski, Simon Vase, great name,
Rory Healy, John Mannion, Nathan Smith.
Oh, no, that's it.
Oh, that's it.
Don't give Nathan Smith a shout. He's only giving us $2 a month.
Oh, yeah.
The tight bastard.
I haven't done it this way. We just have
free.
A massive list of people.
Yeah, Patreon's changed the way they do things, guys. So it's a bit
crazy.
More confusing for us.
Well, we should also say a massive thank you to everybody who listens anyway, because as we said earlier, 100,000 downloads is quite the milestone for us, and we're going to go on to further and greater heights now that we've hit season 2.
And better. And thank you for bearing with us in the time that we've been away, and we are now back. The evidence is incontrovertible, Bouty.
With a vengeance.
We are back, and we are going to be, really. We want to make the Wikicast into something really great, and I've got some plans. And Spongy and Electric, of course, has now sort of come back, and we're going to be doing more stuff on there as well. So keep an eye out for that. But basically, thank you very much for supporting this project, guys. It allows Dan and I to continue our friendship. It allows us to make content that otherwise we can't monetize this in any other way, because it's not good enough to be monetized in any other way. Thank you very much, guys. And I think that's our top lads. But what about the other tiers, Dan? How else can... tell people, before we go through the rest of it, how can people get engaged with the Wikicast?
Well, as Simon's mentioned, we have our top lads. There's our top 30 patrons. Incidentally, there is a space free for another top lad. So should you wish to join their ranks, you absolutely can. You want to head over to patreon.com/the Wikicast and click on top lad and join. But we also have, for those who may be slightly more fiscally limited.
You're a student, perhaps. And
yeah,
also,
absolutely.
In case we haven't said this enough, this is patreon.com/the Wikicast.
Absolutely.
I'm sure I will have edited that little snippet in now like 5 times in this segment.
Yeah, and if you want to donate, you can go to patreon.com/the Wikicast.
Patreon.com/the Wikicast.
Yeah, where you can donate to things like going to our Patreon. .com/the Wikicast. But you can one thing that we always talk about every week is the hot, intense rivalry between Team Dog and Team Cat, which are $1 a month.
$1 a month.
$1 a month. Anyway, moving swiftly on. I suppose the borderline racism was missing from this episode so far.
Yeah, I just ticked that box now. I've only got to talk about Warhammer now, and it's a full set.
For those of you playing Wikicast Bingo, if you don't know what that is, head over to the Facebook page or the community tab on patreon.com/the Wikicast. We need to update you on the standings between Team Dog and Team Cat. And would you believe, Team Dog, 35 patrons, Team Cat, a measly 27.
27. I mean,
for those who may be new, you might not realise that Team Dog is my corner, my representatives, and Team Cat is Simon's sphere, and they're kind of the lesser humans who dwell on this.
To quote Sally LePage, I am a dog in human form who likes cats, whereas Dan is a cat in human form who likes dogs.
Absolutely.
So,
and
come on, guys, throw me a bone here. Throw me a kibble treat here. We've got to claw this back. This is embarrassing.
Yeah, well done, Team Dog. Very proud.
$1 a month. If you like cats and you like the Wikicast, then $1 a month at the patreon.com/the Wikicast. It's a no-brainer, and it will help me save face in front of Dan.
Yeah, so, and the reason we should probably say one of the reasons why we have this Patreon. If you head on over to the website, which if you didn't catch the link, it's
www.patreon.com/the
Wikicast. We have several different goals and tiers, the vast majority of which, happily, we've reached. The first reason we started it is that we wanted this podcast to be self-sufficient, so it would pay for its own hosting, which it very much does now. It also means that because people have been wanting to give so generously, that every month we give $20 as a donation to Wikipedia, because more and more people should. It is when used correctly, it's an incredible resource, and without it, this podcast wouldn't exist. So we make sure, on your behalf and ours, we give a donation each week. And then anything else goes into a little kind of pot of money that sits between Simon and myself, and we can use that for things such as travelling, from say Exeter where I am up to where Simon is, so we can do things together, like recording some of the things that you can find on the Spongy Electric channel, or most excitingly when we did our kind of first foray into merch. So we did t-shirts, which was amazing, and every now and then we still get a notification on Twitter of someone who might have been bought as a gift a sticker or a t-shirt. I was wearing mine as some pajamas just the other night. It's terribly comfortable.
Yes, my mum did the same, and she said she woke up in the morning and I had Dan on my left bosom.
What a place to be.
Which wasn't something that I ever really wanted to think about, but there we go.
There you go.
Thanks, Dan. Putting your face on my mum's tits.
Thanks, Jill. But yeah, and it just basically allows us quite a bit more kind of creative freedom in terms of doing things that we'd want to do but might otherwise be hard.
And I think in the future, I'm very keen to use that fund to get somebody to edit Spongy and Electric so we can do more content on Spongy and Electric, or edit the Wikicast for us. And then also, I would really like to sort of start doing some incentives for the community. So perhaps doing an animation contest, and we can actually afford to give out a prize because of the Patreon. So there's a lot of things to do. It's the Patreon, that's patreon.com/the Wikicast, is the Wikicast Development Fund. And it pays for our costs and it allows us to expand. So that's why we're talking about it. And I think brilliant. We've probably mentioned it enough. Shall we move on to Crisis Corner?
Let's do it.
Thank you to all our Patreons at patreon.com/the Wikicast. Top lad.
So we've been written into by Anonymous.
Jesus!
Yeah,
that came out of fucking nowhere. There was just a really long pause, and then Dan was like, "Anyway." So, wow, my heart. Okay,
we found them once again. It's Anonymous writing in.
Oh, bless Anonymous.
A very, very keen emailer.
Had a very rough time, Anonymous.
Yeah, they go on to say, "Dear Simon and Dan, I have what feels like an awfully secondary school crisis, but for some reason I cannot get it out of my head. I'm an introvert, so I only have a handful of friends who I feel close to. This has never really bothered me all too much until now. I have a friend who seems to be sending me hints that we're no longer friends. They make vague plans with me, like, oh, we're due for a catch-up, or we should really hang out sometime. But whenever I suggest a date, they're always busy. They've always sent me messages apologising for being so unavailable, but they feel quite false. I've bumped into this person at various events which we've attended together in the past. This makes me feel they just don't want to hang out with me, without outright saying so. I know this person is quite opportunistic career-wise, and I cannot help but feel that I've just become too uncool for them based on the crowd I've seen them with as of late. We share a number of mutual friends and interests, so inevitably wherever I go, I will see them. I want to branch out and find new friends to avoid these awkward encounters, but I feel I need some closure from this person before I do that. Is there any way to get a clear answer about the situation without being accusatory? Am I expecting too much from this person? After all, I could just be projecting my insecurities and there may be no situation at all. Also, how do you make friends as an introverted adult in their mid-20s? Apologies for the longer email and what feels like a childish crisis, but any advice would be much appreciated. Thanks, Anonymous.
So let me just sort of cut to the straight of this. So this is Anonymous thinks that one of their friends doesn't want to be friends with them anymore because Anonymous thinks they're not cool enough to be friends with them.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
And then follow on from that, how do you make new friends and branch out?
Yeah, I mean, and do they need to seek closure about this thing? I
mean, branching out, that aspect is, I think, very commendable. In terms of how to make new friends, I always think the best way to do it is to have a shared interest, like join a group. Like, for example, in my local town, I'm actually, hopefully this coming week, going to go to the local choral society, which is apparently quite good. And, you know, then you have like a mechanism to meet people. You are in a room with all the people and you have something in common that you all like doing. And that could be sport, it could be art, it could be music. It's basically like a society at university. There's no reason why you can't do that same stuff as an adult. You just have to find the structure that allows you to do it. I think that's a good way of making friends. In terms of whether or not we obviously don't know the situation, but don't you think it's a little bit unusual that, you know, you think, someone, oh, I think that person doesn't want to be friends with me anymore. I think they're too cool for me. Is that, have you ever thought that?
I haven't experienced it personally, but I've noticed people who perhaps might have been in my year level who, certainly when you're getting to the later stages of secondary school and puberty becomes far more of a thing, and I think everyone becomes, they're so much more self-conscious and image-conscious. People who who used to hang out with a group of friends of mine might have started to do less of that because they realised that actually it might be better to hang out with a sports team or something, because certainly from a male perspective, that's something I noticed. It sounds really strange. I mean, obviously, it's never a nice feeling that you feel like somebody doesn't want to be friends with you, especially if you're always trying to make plans and saying due for a catch up and then not being able to do it. To be honest, if I was to give any advice, it's clearly whether there's a situation there or not, and whether you're projecting things or not. Whatever you're feeling is real to you, and as such, I think it warrants any action that you would like to take. If you think that you can, just send a message saying, "Hey, I just want to make sure that things are kind of clear between us. It feels like things have changed. If you don't want to kind of hang out anymore, that's totally fine. But I'd really appreciate knowing that and having that conversation."
I mean, I do feel like I agree with you in saying that it's real to you, therefore it merits action. But I still think that there is the possibility that that action could be you acting on whether or not you're projecting insecurities. But
regardless of that, the outcome will either be the person goes, "Oh yeah, you're spot on. I don't want to be friends with you anymore," or "Oh no, not at all. I just have been really busy." And like this person said, they're quite opportunistic career-wise, and maybe then you can reply with, "Oh, no worries, that's fine. I'm just really glad I sorted it because I was kind of things were kind of festering in my head, and I was worried things were worse, and wanted to make sure that you were okay."
I mean, I would definitely say that if it was me, I would definitely seek closure. I think in that sense, I'd be like, just perhaps it's like you can phrase it as like an invite to something. It's like, hey, I wondered if you want to hang out. Equally, if you don't want to chill anymore, that's cool. I understand. Yeah. It doesn't have to be a confrontational thing. I mean, you don't sound terribly like angry or even terribly upset about it. You're just, it's almost more of a curiosity to you. It was the impression I got from the email, which is good. You shouldn't be sort of all pent up and emotional about it. So yeah, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be a negative ending to this. Like, hopefully, as Dan says, the happy ending is your friend going, "Oh wait, no, I've just been a bit busy," kind of thing. But yeah, I don't think it's unusual to seek closure. I think that's a good call. And yeah, what's your sort of tip? Obviously, you're still at university, Dan, but how would you recommend as an adult making new friends?
I'm definitely,
because we're both quite introverted, as
I would say that we both are introverted people. There's a different, introverted doesn't mean you actively seek out being alone. There's times for me where I love spending time with people and going out and doing things with groups of people. But I think I read some ages ago, like a definition of an introvert was that you seek solitude to recharge yourself. And I absolutely do that. Some people, when they recharge by being around people. And that's definitely not me. I'd want to be on my own for a bit to get a bit of me time, if you like, to kind of recharge. I suppose what I would do, and what makes it easier, is to not go too out of your way in terms of a comfort zone to try and meet new people, because I'd find that really weird and probably a bit disingenuous. Like if I was going out to something and being like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to go and meet a load of new friends in a club." Because I do like going to clubs, don't get me wrong, but that's not probably my usual hangout. Whereas if there was maybe a folk band playing at a pub or a bar near me, or some event at the cathedral or something that I would be probably going to anyway, then conversation flows easier, and you're more likely to meet someone who might be like-minded.
I mean, I do think, sort of to go back to what I mentioned earlier about Arnold Schwarzenegger's autobiography, something that he believes in, and I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt who first said it, was that like you should do something that scares you every day. Push yourself out of your comfort zone, but you don't have to echo what Dan says, that doesn't all have to be all at once. Yeah, like it can be incremental changes and just a little bit at a time, and eventually it does add up. And you just, I guess, have to be patient unless you're willing to take that kind of big leap. Yeah. But to sort of combine what Dan was saying with what I was saying earlier is, stick close to what you would be interested in and see if you can find like a structure that allows you to meet people in it, like a student society, but obviously not a university. I think there is this perception that it is basically impossible to meet new people as an adult unless you are dating or at work. And, I'm not really the best person to answer that because I've never had to deal with that, having just come out of university, and I have enough friends to tie me over. I don't feel like I'm not sat thinking, gosh, I wish I knew more people. But I don't know. That again, it's a problem that we're not terribly well qualified to answer. But I hope that was helpful.
I think so. I mean, things like this are so specific to the individual. It's all Simon and I always say this is just kind of advice of what we would do in the situation, and definitely not kind of like a step-by-step guide as to how to solve a problem. But maybe just hearing how we might deal with things might resonate with you, or give you another option to think about, or talk through an option that you go, oh yeah, I definitely don't want to do that. It's just as helpful to rule out possibilities than come up with them.
And in this scenario, I think basically what I would say is I would definitely seek closure, try and phrase it in a friendly way, and if you can, follow an interest, especially if there's something in the local area, especially if it's quite esoteric and it's like quite, I think the smaller the niche, the more you're going to get on with the people who are there. If you really like bad movies, for example, there's a place in Bristol, I'm not there anymore, but there's a place in Bristol called the Bad Movies Club, where people just get together and watch The Room and Samurai Cop and that kind of thing. And I feel like if you go there, then that's like such a narrow niche, you're definitely going to get on with the people who are there, because it's only a certain kind of person that likes it.
We had similar things where we'd get talking to people when we go to Hole in the Wall to go and watch Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
exactly. I absolutely agree that doing something every day new that scares you and puts you out of your comfort zone is really valuable. But if you're somebody who knows that you're introverted and knows that maybe starting those new relationships is difficult, then maybe that hard thing you do every day doesn't have to be the way you meet people, because that's just making the job even harder. If you know that there's something on that you already have an interest in, use that as a strength.
But there we go. I feel like that's some pretty solid. Well done, us. I'm going to give us a round of applause there.
Nice one.
Well done, Dan.
Brilliant. Well done, Simon.
Oh, thank you, mate.
Really.
And now we're in Correspondent. Corin's Pondants
Corner. It's a lovely corner.
I can't believe, incidentally, Dan, you teased this at the start of the podcast. What did you do that was so damn cheeky?
Oh, yeah. As one tends to do, I finished watching Bodyguard last night on BBC One. Incidentally, if you're not watching that, do, because it's written incredibly well. It's filmed beautifully. Casting is superb. It's probably one of the best BBC dramas I've seen. I've heard that a friend was playing at Firehouse, which is a lovely pub in Exeter.
I kind of
tootled on down. And somebody mentioned in passing that the Cheeky Girls were playing at Rosie's that very night. So what was going to be a fairly quiet and relaxed night turned into a massive sesh. And I got home about 3, and I have photos and video evidence of me dancing with and taking photos with the Cheeky Girls, which is just incredible.
Can you also repeat what you said to me between sections about what happened to a friend of ours?
Oh, yeah. So we have a dear friend called Luke, who's an absolutely lovely chap, not only because he sings first tenor, but he is just genuinely very, very nice. He was quite well oiled at this stage and was looking for something to...
It was very greasy, very oiled up.
He was looking for something to brighten the night and add a bit of kind of spice and drama. And what he decided to do was the way that... Let me paint the scene. I'm going to paint a picture with my words. As you walked into the club, you go up a flight of stairs and you'd go into the floor that's called Pop World, which is a terrible, terrible place. But anyway, this is where the Cheeky Girls were. Yeah, this is where the Cheeky Girls were, and they brought in some barriers. So they had like a cordoned off area where they were going to be, because obviously they don't just sing, they dance as well and kind of skip about, not wearing much at all, and it's all just very awkward because they're now really old, and it's just hilarious. Anyway,
how old are the Cheeky? I swear they're not really old.
Well, they're really old from what you remember, because I think they're 35.
They are. Hang on. How old are they? They were born in 1982. Yeah, they're 35.
Yeah.
You're quite right.
And when they did their videos, they would have been like barely legal, I guess, or like just 20. Anyway, so they were, to all intents and purposes, old. And they were dancing behind these barriers, and they had their kind of pom-poms and things, and were kind of getting the crowd going. The crowd being about 12 people, because all of the fresh who came in this year probably don't know who the Cheeky Girls are.
Enter our lubed up friend.
Yeah, Luke was standing behind these barriers thinking, yeah, I know exactly what I needed to do. And all I can do, he Leroy Jenkins'd into this barriered area. He just jumped over the barriers and went straight in and had a dance for about 3 seconds, and then was immediately, much like if you tried to assassinate a president, was taken out by bouncers, just completely dropped to the floor, like literally tossed over the barriers head first, and promptly escorted and thrown out of the club immediately. And it was just the greatest thing I think I've ever seen. It was just amazing. He did an incredible job, and we're all I'm proud to call him a friend.
Wow, a top lad. Anyway,
top lad
for nearly assaulting the Cheeky Girls.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is Correspondents Corner. I just can't believe you hadn't mentioned that yet. Especially seeing as you teased it at the start. Right. So we haven't looked for our emails for a while. So let's have a quick whisk through. Kicking off with Will. Simon is resetting.
Wow.
Will
Remix.
Alsop has emailed us with the email November date thing. Messrs. Moore and Clark. Thank you. Yes, to a meetup in November and make it the Sunday because group Evensong trip. So this was your suggestion that you are in London, aren't you?
Absolutely.
And this isn't the only one. Hecking Ruddy George has also emailed. So
Marvellous.
I feel like this could be a thing. That this could genuinely happen. Will is basically saying, in all seriousness, you guys have made my final year of A-levels much more bearable, and especially meeting Simon up in Edinburgh. Oh, I remember you. Yeah, you were at the Dark Matter talk. Yes. And you were. It was a highlight of your 8-month readership of the Wikicast. Thanks for all the fabulous
amazing.
choral content. Choral Corner, perhaps.
Oh, I like it.
We could have Dan's Choral Corner for what you've been singing that week.
Yeah, my favourite piece of the week.
And then best Will, age 18, pi squared over 11 years. Now, there's a problem with... I suppose your age is always irrational anyway. Unless you're approximating it. In which case, well done. I like it. It's unconventional, but I like it.
We have an email here from Connor Levers saying, Dear Messrs. Clark and Moore, regarding your inquiry during the most recent Wikicast, namely episode 40, one would like to inform the forestated... of Connor Levers' enthusiasm, willingness for physical interaction amongst many of the followers and leaders of our great fandom within the capital of our glorious empire during the 18th or 19th rotation of the Earth around the suns of the first cent year of the third killer year. Oh, Oxford comma, Connor, come on. May the feline armies conquer all who proclaim the canine breed superior. Your ever faithful patron, benefactor, and lad of the highest esteem, Mr. Connor, pull the lever levers. Age 21.74520547 orbits of the sun.
I was so in that I did not get a single idea about what it was about.
No, I don't know either. Thanks, Connor.
Jolly good. Next up, we have an email from Matt Butler, and the subject line grabbed me for this one because the subject line is I make (parentheses made) climate change YouTube videos in PowerPoint. So this is related to when we found out that Tierzy makes his million view getting videos, like he's such a hot channel right now, in motherfucking PowerPoint. So this should be good. Dear Messrs. Clark and Moore, only in this order because I found Simon first, quite right.
Fair enough.
Long-term listener, first-time corresponder. I listened to your most recent Wikicast while doing things around the house, as I always do. I too do things around the house, and thought I should finally get in touch to let you know about my PowerPoint project. My YouTube videos were inspired by the Wikicast in 2 ways. Firstly, listening to your podcast made me want to do something. Excellent. And secondly, I love watching Simon's videos, especially those on climate change. Excellent again. The animations were made in PowerPoint and exported to video, which always takes ages as they were such huge files. I record audio on my phone using a sock as a pop filter. The audio is processed in Audacity, and so wait, you've got like the jankier setup, and then
Holy
Audacity
shit.
comes in. Oh no, that's the free one.
Hang on, what was that really, really, really comically crap robot on Robot Wars that would always break us when we watched the episodes?
Nuts. Oh, the one made of wood. I can't remember the name of the one made of wood.
Oh, the one made of wood. Amazing.
The audio is processed in Audacity and then combined with the animations in iMovie on my girlfriend's laptop This is amazingly janky. I love it. I had
Matt,
no
this
money
is
at
incredible.
all, but didn't let this stop me, and for that I am proud. As you should be, Matt. I realise
Absolutely.
that it has been a month since you emailed us, but I am proud of you, Matt. That is an amazing feat.
Keep doing what you're doing.
They are... so hang on. This entire process cost me nothing, although it took a while and a half. I can imagine. I've attached my most recent video. The channel is creatively named Climate Changer below. Though they are far from perfect, I'm actually quite impressed with the progress I've made. I haven't made a video recently as I've been busy with lots of projects and some personal issues, but looking forward to coming back to it. Interestingly, I started the YouTube channel while I was on a year abroad in Melbourne. I normally study at Warwick and love recognising the names of places Dan mentions.
Oh, lovely.
Wow, hang on. I'm going to give this a watch right now and report in. Hang on.
I'm
not going to watch the whole thing because it's 8 minutes long, but hang on.
Oh, this really works.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have guessed this was made in PowerPoint.
Matt, you have impressed me greatly with this.
Yeah, this is really good.
Okay, I'm going to stop there, but I will be watching that later and I will almost certainly be tweeting that one out because Matt, aged 42.42 over 2. So hang on, does that mean you're 21 and like a month or two old?
Clever.
Highly impressed. Honestly, that is really, really impressive. Well done.
We have another email here, incidentally, from Mostyn Taylor, entitled Supermarkets. Righto, chaps. I was listening to the 2001 A Space Travesty episode. Wow, that's many moons ago. Yeah. And I'm livid. This email is regarding your discussion of supermarkets. Dan, how can you say such blasphemous things about the Co-op when you live so close to our Lord and Saviour, Penny Road Co-op? Thanks, Moz. I do indeed live near Penny Road Co-op. This is true.
Well, no, not anymore. Your nearest supermarket is now Cost Cutters?
I mean, I still live in...
Oh, no, sorry, yeah, you still live in the same place. I'll have to cut the name of the the road there.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I think it might have got away in one of the episodes because I bumped into someone the other day and they said, he like tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Oh, hi, you Dan?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Oh, I listened to the podcast." I was like, "Oh, cool." And I was literally passing the Co-op. And I think he was a little bit... I'm going to very, very embarrassing use the word starstruck. But he said,
you self-important bitch.
I've been looking around and kind of recognizing the areas in the videos because I used to watch Simon's videos. And been trying to work out where you live. Well, and I was like, okay.
I literally show the front of your house in one of the videos. So it's not. I wasn't trying very hard, but Brilliant. Yeah, I forgot that you hadn't actually moved. Yes, so yes, you are still so close to the Co-op, and it is a great Co-op.
It is a very good Co-op.
Apparently full of starstruck fans.
Yeah, I know, hilarious.
So, righto, chaps. I was just writing Roman poetry, and I am Livy.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it could be quite a quick one. Pixel Girl's come back. Hello. Oh, this is yeah, you're on headphones. Dan says, "Hey, Pixel Girl."
Dan Yellow.
Oh yeah, you can hear her. Was that yoga or run? I didn't hear you. Yoga.
I am Master Yoga Warrior.
Okay, how was it?
It was really hot because they turned the radiators on, and then the lady was like, "Do you want me to turn the radiators off?" And I was like in my head, "Yes, please turn the radiators off." And everyone was like, "No, we like the sweat." You're weird.
Stunning reporting there from Pixel Girl.
Now my legs hurt. Love you, Dan.
No, she doesn't.
Love you too.
He says love you too. I should actually, at this point, like to point out, so I went to yoga with Pixel Girl the other day, and I used to do yoga every week in Oxford in my final year. I hadn't been for ages, and basically I went to the session and I brought a towel with me and a drink because I was like, this is going to be tough. Like I'm not going to find this easy. I'm going to bring a towel because I'm probably going to be sweaty. And Pixel Girl's just there like, oh, God, you're not going to need that. You're going to be fine. Cue, like 30 minutes later, me vibrating. My entire body is vibrating whilst trying to hold a fucking warrior pose with my hands over my head. Sweat is dripping down me, pooling on my mat. And like, I'm just like looking with my face, like shaking, looking at her, being like, yeah, you think this is easy?
Yeah.
You glad I brought that towel now?
Amazing.
She's just come back in. That was what happened. Get out. Go on. Get out. It's my office.
We've got an email here from Patrick. This email is primarily aimed at Dan, And no need to read it out live. Well,
Tough tits.
Congratulations, Patrick. Here we go. Hello, Dan. Hello, Patrick. I'm a new exchange student at the University of Exeter and I just arrived in town today. You read out my email announcing my acceptance in an episode a few months back. Oh, I remember. Yeah. Well, congratulations on finally getting here. I was wondering about hearing your choir live, so I'd love to know when your next service is. I was also wondering if you had any quick tips for a new student. Nothing extensive, just anything you reckon would be helpful. Thanks a lot, and I hope the podcast returns soon. Regards, Patrick. Well, the podcast has returned. It's here right now. And in regards to hearing the choir live, the choir that I used to speak about was the University of Exeter Chapel Choir or University of Exeter Singers. The easiest way to know when they are singing is to go and find them on Facebook. The Chapel Choir sing at 5.
We had to get there at 4.
5, that's it, yeah. The service begins at 5 o'clock, so you'd want to get to the chapel. That's the Mary Harris Chapel at Exeter University, probably about 10 to. And then you can go and listen to Evensong. That's every Wednesday. If you can't make Wednesdays, you can come to the Cathedral Evensong, which is at 5:30 every day, and at 4 o'clock on a Sunday. That's 5:30 every day and 4 o'clock on a Sunday. At Exeter Cathedral, it's the big church.
Can't miss it.
Like a cathedral.
You literally can't miss it. Yeah. The other thing to point out is it is free, completely free, and you don't have to do anything. You don't have to be religious. If you want to hear the choir, that goes for anybody that wants to go and hear them. You can just sit at the back. No one's going to bother you. We have a lovely chaplain this year who's taken over at the University Chapel, so you'll be very welcome, and you don't have to do a single thing.
Absolutely.
Well, with that, I am delighted, Daniel. I'm absolutely delighted to announce that we have an email here from Hecking Ruddy George.
Oh my God, here we go.
And it's called Hecking Ruddy Fanfiction 2, a hecking study in Ruddy Scarlet.
Oh,
now,
gosh.
Last time, George wrote us a fanfiction based on quotes from the Discord.
Yeah.
So this, I don't believe, is that. So I'll read his email and then we'll get on to the fanfiction. He writes, Dear John and Sherlock, so I made another fanfiction. It's mainly a rip-off of A Study in Scarlet. Actually, many parts are just straight up stolen from the book. I don't really know why I made this, to be honest. There probably won't be a chapter 2 because I don't really know why I made this in the first place. Kind regards. I can't even describe how he's done his signature this time. It's Hecking Ruddy George in yellow Comic Sans. And the Ecking is in purple highlighter and the Gior of George is in brown highlighter, and the start of every word is non-capitalized, whereas the rest of the word is capitalized.
Yeah, it's basically it's classic Hecking Ruddy George.
Also, P.S. looking forward to the meme peer review video. Whoever idea that was is genius. I said that I'd do it. Did you see this, by the way?
I think I did, yeah. This was on Twitter.
Nigella Lawson retweeted me.
Oh my God.
Like, I was at Sitsi, and I remember showing my phone to Pixel Girl, and we were like, what the just happened? Like, Nigella Lawson, because I was like joking, like, yeah, if this gets 1,000 retweets, I'll do it. And then it like got 500. So it wasn't what I said, but I still would like to do it. It is on my board of video ideas. When I've caught up, I'm working on the Yogscast video at the moment, and I'm going to do a vlog about where I was for 2 months, and a few other things, and then that is going to happen, I promise. Anyway, we now have Settle In, Dan. I hope you're not going to read this along with me. You're going to close that tab, because I'm going to read to you A Hecking Study in Ruddy Scarlet by Hecking Ruddy George, Chapter 1, Dr. Simon Clark. In the year 1878, Dan Moore obtained a degree in English literature, after which, though it was not his dream job, he found work as an apprenticed archivist at the Public Record Office on Chancery Lane, London. The apprenticeship at the record office brought promotion to many of his young colleagues, but for him it had nothing but misfortune and disaster. After a review, he was removed from his apprenticeship and instead offered a part-time job as a doorkeeper.
It's true. It's all true.
I wouldn't trust you as an apprentice. On the first day of this job, a crate filled with many pages of records bound together with string fell out of a cab and came crashing down on him. So great was the force, it shattered his shoulder bone and damaged his subclavian artery.
Oh no.
Moore's physical condition meant that he could no longer continue working at the Public Record Office and had to hand in his resignation and his keys to the company lodgings. Moore found himself leading what he described as a meaningless existence, staying in hotels as his money steadily ran out. He realised if he wished to stay in London, a city which was admittedly a cesspool, but the only place in England which brought more comfort, he must find someone to share lodgings and split the rent with. The very next day, Moore met with an old university friend of his, Stamford. Quickly enough, the conversation moved on from pleasantries to discussion of Moore's desire to find lodgings and someone to split the rent with. "That's a strange thing," remarked Moore's companion. "Not just this morning did I have a similar discussion with a fellow who's working at the chemical factory up at the hospital." "By Jove!" Moore cried. "What a fantastic turn of fate. I'm pretty sure I've heard you say that at some point."
Probably.
"I should prefer having a partner to being alone." Young Stamford gave Moore a strange look. "You don't know Dr. Simon Clark yet. Perhaps you would not care for him as a constant companion. He's a little queer in his ideas, an enthusiast in some branches of
He's
science."
just a little queer, actually. Don't worry about his ideas. Just
Yeah.
generally.
It is known. He's a little queer in his ideas, an enthusiasm in some branches in science, as far as I know. He's a decent enough fellow. "A medical student, I suppose?" Moore replied. "No, I have no idea what he intends to go in for. Let's just say he has his head in the clouds." The rest of the evening was spent catching up. Moore and his companion had a merry time. Stamford joked that maybe Moore should have done this drinking tomorrow to prepare himself for meeting Dr. Clark. The following day, Stamford brought Moore to the hospital's chemical laboratory. At the rear end of the lofty chamber stood a tall, broad man tinkering with test tubes, absorbed in his work. "Ha!" the man shouted as he ran over. "I found it! I found it! Adding a heavy metal causes a precipitate to form." "Mr. Moore, Dr. Simon Clark," said Stamford, introducing the two men. "How are you?" he said cordially. "You've been in Afghanistan, I perceive."
Here we go.
Oh, here we
See the
go.
bit where it's literally just been lifted from...
It's Sherlock. You know, George, I doubted you. I wondered where this was going. Okay. "What?" Moore retorted in confusion. "I've not been to Afghanistan. I've never even left London." "Oh," Clark replied. "But," he stuttered, "you look like the medical type. An army doctor, I guessed. Your face seems somewhat dark, not the natural tint of your skin, for your wrists are fair. You look like you've undergone some hardship. Your left arm is injured. You hold it in a stiff and unnatural way. So, clearly, I thought you were an army doctor who had just come back from Afghanistan." "Well, I'm not," Moore replied. "I was a doorman for the Public Records Office." "Oh dear," Stamford muttered. "He does this a lot." "Dr. Clark, do you think you're a detective?" Moore inquired. "No? Well, maybe," Clark retorted defensively. "It's just a hobby, but I'm not really good at it. My real job is a consulting weatherman."
That is literally what you are. Holy shit, that Sky interview. A consulting weatherman. Oh my god, George, I love you. This is the best thing
I don't
ever.
know why I ever doubted you, George. Consulting weatherman. I should put that on my business cards. Not this again, Stamford sighed.
So great.
"What does that even mean?" Moore asked. "People come up to me and ask what the weather is, and I tell them," Clark said enthusiastically. "I've told you before," Stamford said sternly, "that is not a job. When people ask you about the weather, they're just making conversation. It is a job because I tell them what the weather is and then I take their money. I'm doing a service and they're making money, which is the definition of a job," Clark shouted. "You're a pickpocket," Stamford snapped. "I can do what I want," Clark ejaculated. Dan Moore ejaculated. End of chapter.
Oh, brilliant. Wow, well done, George. Once again, you've emailed in just complete bloody drivel, and it's marvellous.
Oh, God. It's like anti-content. Well, Dan, what have we learned this episode?
Well, Simon, we started, as you may have expected, with the women's liberation movement in Europe.
Ah, yes, as is tradition.
Yeah, and we learnt that it's about 36 pages long. Started in the late 1960s and continued through the 1970s, and in some cases into the early 1980s. It's just inordinately long, and we tried to have a brief discussion about it, but
it was overwhelming. It was
it's just too
overwhelming
much.
levels of feminism.
So we skipped on over to Critics Corner, where I spoke about a multitude of different things I've been watching.
Well, we've both been doing a lot, and I felt like we have held back on splurging about what we've been doing.
Yeah, we've been restrained.
Yeah, we have been restrained. Yes, you talked about the cathedral stuff. I talked about D&D. I talked about Dr. Atomic, which everybody must listen to.
Yeah,
you've been watching some films, and then in Crisis Corner, we actually, I think, had some useful advice for once.
I think so. Yeah,
about making friends as an adult, and then quite a brisk clip clop, snip snop, spit spot through Correspondence Corner.
Absolutely.
And then a hecking ruddy fanfiction.
Bloody marvellous.
If anybody would like to send us a fanfiction and they think they can do better than Hecking Ruddy George, or would like to write one about me in Warhammer 40,000...
If you think you can write one better, you're wrong.
Yes, I mean, that goes without saying.
Unless it's going to be fantasy themed, in which case it's probably going to be great, because I'll just giggle like an excited child.
It's a Robot Wars themed fanfiction.
Ooh, yes.
Where either Dan and I are roboteers, or we're sentient robots.
I think sentient robots is the way forward.
Maybe. Okay.
I, for one, welcome our new overlords.
That's all for this week's episode. Don't forget to subscribe to us on your podcasting service of choice. You can like us on Facebook, and if you'd like to see our faces, check out our YouTube channel, Spongy and Electric.
Feminist novel recommendations, Ready Player One reviews, and other thoughts on the show can be sent to us at spongyelectric@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
Join us again for another tumble down the wiki rabbit hole.
And we'll see you next time. I kind of forgot that this was a podcast, not just me chatting to you, and I did do quite a massive fart. I want to know whether the mic.
We found the thing to close out the episode.
Oh no! I mean, it felt brilliant, but I just want to know whether the mic picked it up, and if it did.
Well, dear readers, if that microphone did pick it up, you're about to hear it 5 times, one in a row. Enjoy.
Brilliant.